Nadada silently watched the car go. Someone had thrown out the backpack, but why did she go up to it and carefully pick up the find by the strap? It was a completely intact, almost new school backpack, bright blue with a picture of cars, heavy and good. Which one will I take to school for Pashka? Nadada thought, barely holding back a joyful smile. Her 7-year-old son had been carrying an old, shabby backpack left by his cousin for the 2nd year. The widow couldn't afford to buy a new one, and here it was, a gift from fate that she couldn't even wait for. As she walked home along a country road after her second shift, the wind swirled in the air, trash pushed her back. Making its way under the collar of her thin jacket, her feet in wet boots ached from fatigue, but she habitually turned to the dump. It was her little simple rule, look here. In passing, sometimes luck smiled, either a microwave that was still working, or a coat that looked almost new after washing. Wealthier people often left decent things at the very edge, not daring to throw them in the pile, as if her conscience told her to leave a chance to those who were worse off. This evening at first did not promise any finds. Old furniture beyond repair, broken toys. Hope pulled her head into her shoulders and was about to pass by when suddenly in the distance she heard the roar of an engine right next to a black foreign car. Stopped at the edge of the dump, too alien for such a place. A carefree male laugh was heard in the silence, and at the same time a multicolored backpack flew out of the open window, plopping right into the liquid mud. The wheels spun, lifting up trash from under the wheels, and the car jerked from its place, dissolving in a dusty haze. Hope remained standing, feeling an icy shiver run down her back, either from the cold or from some vague premonition. Hope looked around, no one in the distance. 2 stray dogs were rummaging in the trash heap, and somewhere the body of a bulldozer was rummaging. She quickly brushed the dirt off the pocket of her backpack with her sleeve, wondering what was inside. Strong curiosity fought with vague anxiety, looking at the road. Suddenly the car would return. The woman timidly unzipped the bag. Inside there were neatly folded things, as if covering the rest of the contents of the backpack. Nadada pushed them aside and almost dropped the backpack in surprise. Right under the sweatshirt lay neat stacks of bills, tied with bank ribbons. There were more of them than Nadada had ever seen in her entire life. Her heart began to beat fast and loudly. Oh my God, it can't be, flashed through her mind for a moment. Her vision darkened. It seemed as if the ground was slipping out from under her feet. Her fingers began to tremble. She carefully ran them along the top stack. Real money, she thought. Huge stacks of real money. Nadada looked around again, expecting a catch. Perhaps this was some kind of joke, but there was still no one around. She threw her backpack over her shoulder and hurried home. Under the weight of unfading wealth, the backpack pulled at her shoulder. On the way, the woman began to breathe faster, feeling her knees buckling. Never before had fate given her such gifts, and in order not to miss new stories, subscribe to the channel, like and enjoy listening. Just a year ago, Nadada lost her husband Andre. Her loved one died suddenly and stupidly. An alcoholic neighbor carelessly started an old tractor and it rushed, hitting a man walking along the side of the road. So Nadada at 28 was left alone with a small son in her arms. At first, her neighbors in the countryside helped her as best they could, but everyone had their own daily bread. Insurance premiums went to pay off accumulated loans, and meager salaries barely covered the cost of food. Soon debts for gas and electricity accumulated. The other day, the owner of the house she was renting threatened to kick her out with a child if she did not pay 3 months in advance. And yesterday the school principal scolded Nadada in front of other parents. Your son's notebooks and textbooks have no covers. Aren't you ashamed? Burning with humiliation, the young widow only silently lowered her eyes. There was no use arguing, and now money, unimaginable money, flowed into her hands by itself. It was hard to believe in such luck, because she could have immediately paid off all her debts, bought her son warm clothes and put the backpack aside, and maybe even bought her own home. But where would these bills in an abandoned backpack come from? Such riches are not given so easily. Since childhood her grandmother taught her, easy money will not lead to good. Now she remembered it especially clearly. Fear pierced hope. It could be someone's trap or dirty money. On the way home she met a neighbor who, as usual, asked, "Did you find anything?" Called out neighbor Nikolai, loading bags of garbage. Nadada shook her head nervously. She did not want to tell anyone about the find. Not now, not later, not about trifles. At home they know less, but sleep more soundly, having locked the door with a latch. She emptied the contents of the backpack onto the old sofa. In the dim light of the bulb, dozens of stacks of bills shimmered with the greenish-grey color of wealth. Pashka, who had returned from school, stood next to his mother with his mouth open. "Mom, is this real money?" he whispered. Nadada's throat was dry, but she nodded. "Whose are they? Can I take at least some?" The little girl, her eyes shining, reached for one pack. "Don't you dare!" Nadezhda screamed and grabbed her son by the hand. Coming to her senses, she stroked the frightened boy's head. "Sorry, it's just that it's someone else's. I'm afraid to take it." What if it's a gangster's? He was silent, looking at the carpet of money with awe. Nadada was scared, but it was even scarier to decide what to do next. Should she go to the police? Then, of course, they would confiscate everything from her, and there would be no money left, and what if they suspected her and took it for themselves, and the owners would probably look for it? She remembered the expensive SUV. What if these people came back, or maybe someone had been following them, so they threw it away? Thoughts were spinning in her head, giving her no peace. Nadada feverishly walked around the tiny kitchen, fiddling with the ends of her scarf. Pasha sat down next to the money, watching with delight as the light from the lantern played on the neat bundles. "Mom, let's hide them," he finally suggested seriously. "What if no one is found? Then we can buy an apartment and a bike." "Son, it's very difficult," she said quietly, kneeling next to the boy. "You could kill for that kind of money if they found out we had it. It would be better if they never found it." She stroked her son's back, trying to figure out what to do. It was already dark outside, the wind howled in the chimney, a quiet hum came from the next room, and a cracking sound was heard. The old window did not close all the way, and gusts of wind slammed the sash against the frame. Nadada shuddered, her nerves were on edge. She needed to hide all these bills, and go to the police tomorrow. She quietly asked her son to help and began shoving the money wherever she could. She hid some under the sofa, some in the cupboard with dishes, and even in the toilet cistern. Soon there was no trace left of the mysterious treasure in the house. Before going to bed, her son asked her if she could keep some money for herself. Nadezhda only shook her head. "You can't take what's not yours," and, deciding to go to the police in the morning, she fell asleep unnoticed. At night, she was awakened by a strange sound, as if a gate had slammed in the yard. Nadada immediately opened her eyes. It was dark in the small bedroom, only dim moonlight was falling from the window. Her heart was pounding dully. Had they really come? She turned her head. Pashka was peacefully snoring nearby under the blanket, trying not to make any noise. The woman slid off the bed and tiptoed into the kitchen. A dim light was on duty in the pale light at the door leading to the yard. Nadada made out a shadow. Someone was on the porch. She covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. Several long seconds of silence, then a rustle, a quiet click, and the door swung for a second. Nadezhda did not understand what was happening, and then she saw the iron handle of the latch slowly turn. Someone had pushed a long object through the crack in the door frame. Nadada recoiled, turning around. It was cold. "Who's there?" she asked hoarsely, trying to make her voice firm. The handle immediately froze, but the answer was silence. The widow's heart was pounding wildly. She had nothing to defend herself with from Pashka. She had to save the child. She rushed back to the bedroom. Nadezhda woke her son and whispered, "Quiet, darling, climb out the window and run quickly to Aunt Zina." The boy did not understand anything about Sonia, but his mother quickly pulled his jacket over his pajamas and literally pushed him out the narrow window that looked out onto the neighboring garden. Pashka cried out quietly in surprise, but obediently rushed into the darkness. As soon as she helped him out, there was a loud crash outside. The front door blew out with a bang from a strong kick. Nadada gasped. Two strangers burst into the house. They grabbed Nadada roughly, showered her with threats, and demanded that she give back the money. One of them barked, "Where is the money? Tell me quickly, or I'll kill you." Nadada covered her head with her hands in horror. "Just don't touch my son." "I'll give you everything," she croaked. One of the bandits hit the woman in the face. Blood immediately appeared from her mouth. Her eyes went cloudy, and her cheek burned like fire. The bandits clearly weren't going to wait for an answer and rushed to search the house. One turned over the sofa, pulling out hidden bundles of money. The other turned the entire kitchen upside down. Things were flying all over the house. Rustling bills were flying around. Nadada watched the destruction in despair, but then a siren sounded in the yard. The police arrived. Apparently, someone, having heard the noise, managed to call the local police officer, and the criminals were quickly captured. Nadada, beaten and trembling from the horror she had experienced, only thanked God that she and her son had remained alive. She could not hold back her tears of relief. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Petrenko helped Nadada to her feet and carefully threw his jacket over her shoulders. He could hardly contain his anger, looking at the beaten woman. "Everything is fine. My scoundrels will not be touched anymore," he calmed Nadia in a hoarse voice. "Your Pashka is a real hero. He rushed to us and raised everyone to our feet. Now you are safe." Nadezhda only nodded, not believing that the terrible night was already over. Morning had finally come, when the bandits were taken away and the police completed all the paperwork. Nadezhda sat on a stool by the gate, wrapped in a shawl. A pale sun was rising over the village, the paramedic was bandaging her broken eyebrow, and Pashka was sitting nearby on the porch, warming a mug of hot tea in his hands. The boy's lips were still trembling after night terror, but he was beaming with pride at his feet. The son did not leave his mother's side for a single step. "Mom," he suddenly called timidly, "what will happen now?" "We will live in poverty again." His lips were trembling. He remembered how for a moment he believed in a fairy tale, and it crumbled to dust. Nadezhda pressed her son to herself and hugged him. Her heart was overflowing with gratitude that God had saved the most precious thing. "We will live honestly, my son, and poverty is not our threshold," she answered tenderly, kissing her son on the dark crown of his head. "Money is something that can be acquired. The main thing is that everything is good between us." At that moment, the lieutenant approached them. He had just talked on the phone and was now smiling, looking at the mother and son. "Any news, Nadia?" he said affably. "It turns out that you are heroes." Yes, this money was stolen, and they are looking for it. A very important piece of evidence. You helped us get to the whole gang." "Can you imagine?" Nadezhda flared up. "What are you saying? I didn't do anything. I just did it wrong," she said embarrassedly, adjusting the bandage that had slipped onto the vestibule opposite. The lieutenant raised his finger, as if putting a bold point. "You could say you played a key role. Someone else could have hidden with that amount of money, and you brought it home to hand it over to the police. Those smart guys deliberately threw the backpack in the dump. They thought it would lie there, and then they would come back and take it if they realized there were no traces. They played for sure, and you went and took it from them. They were watching you, and you got caught like mice in a mousetrap." She shook her head, remembering how everything spun from a strange find in the dump to this night full of pain and fear. Now the thieves are in handcuffs, the yard is full of people, and the local police officer is standing nearby. "We have already contacted the owner of the money," he continued, scratching the back of his head. "They explained everything to him, how it happened. He ordered to leave you half the amount, so with a clear conscience he says that he is worried about your condition without you. He would not have returned this money." Nadezhda was silent, as if the words suddenly lost their meaning. Half of this money for her was something from another life. She only squeezed her fingers tighter, feeling her hands trembling. "Thank you," she breathed out. "Just thank you," and could not utter a word. Pashka happily jumped up. "Hooray, Mom, we are rich," he asked in amazement, looking over his mother's shoulder. For the first time in a long time, Nadezhda smiled sincerely and happily through her tears. "Yes, son," she said, hugging the boy tightly. "Now we are the richest, because we are alive, and everything will be fine with us." Behind her, the first rays of the sun gilded the roofs of the houses, illuminating a new day. Nadezhda raised her head to the brightening sky and quietly thanked fate. She knew that a difficult, but now calm life awaited her, a life without debts, fear and humiliation, an honest life in which there would certainly be a place for simple human happiness. A week later, Nadezhda managed to pay off all her debts, and the school principal personally praised Pasha for his courage. Life began to improve. A month later, a ceremonial awarding of the young widow took place in the District House of Culture. Little Pasha stood next to his mother on the stage in the hall. Almost all the fellow villagers applauded loudly while standing. Many wiped away tears of emotion. They presented a letter of thanks and a valuable gift, noting her honesty and courage, and accepted congratulations. Nadezhda only smiled modestly, holding her son's hand tightly, but the main thing was not the certificate of honor or the gifts, but the fact that peace, security, and simple human happiness finally reigned in their home. Fate did not spoil Nadezhda, but tested her strength time after time. It seemed, how long can you hold out when life throws up new challenges? But she held on not because she was a heroine, she simply did not know how else. She always believed that even when there is dirt and lies around, there should be a place for honesty and kindness in a person. This evening was one of the hardest for her in recent times, both mentally and physically. Fear, pain, helplessness, everything mixed into one point. However, fate unexpectedly paid her back, but this made it even more significant. Money, of course, will help, but something else was more important. The truth still matters. Even a small person living according to his conscience can change the course of events, and maybe even his own life. If this story touched you, share it with your loved ones, like and subscribe so as not to miss new stories. And write in the comments what city you are from. Listening will be interesting to read.